Hi Reddit, I'm 26F, and I'm still trying to process everything that happened the night of my sister's graduation party. I've replayed it so many times in my head, wondering if I misread the signs or overreacted. But the truth is, the more I think about it, the more I realize this wasn't some sudden shift. It was the moment all the quiet slights and subtle dismissals over the years finally boiled over. This story is about family, about how the people closest to you can make you feel like a stranger at your own table. My younger sister, Elena, 22F, just graduated from university with honors. She's always been the star of the family. Bright smile, perfect grades, a social butterfly, and the kind of daughter my parents like to show off. I don't say that bitterly. Well, maybe a little, but more as an observation. Elena has always had their full attention. Me? I was the quiet one. I started working right out of high school, took night classes, and slowly worked my way through a business degree. I pay my own rent, own my car, and never asked for help. Not because I didn't need it at times, but because I knew it wouldn't come without strings. The graduation party was being held at a country club an hour outside the city. My mom had sent out glossy invitations and insisted on formal attire only. I was genuinely happy for Elena, even if I wasn't expecting much for myself. Still, I took the time to find a soft navy dress, fixed my hair, and wrapped the gift I'd picked out weeks before, a beautiful leather-bound planner embossed with her initials. She always talked about starting her own business after school, and I thought it would be something both elegant and useful. When I arrived, the parking lot was already packed. I remember pausing before stepping out of my car, just sitting there for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel. I wasn't nervous, exactly, but I had that familiar tightness in my chest, the kind that comes when you're walking into a room full of people who say they love you, but never quite act like it. Inside, the place looked like something out of a wedding magazine. White and gold decor, soft lights strung across the ceiling, and floral arrangements in every corner. There was even a small stage with a balloon arch and Elena's name spelled out in glittering letters. I spotted my mom immediately, dressed in champagne-colored satin, her hair in curls, fussing with the dessert table. My dad was standing nearby, talking to Uncle Tomas and Aunt Lydia. Mateo, my brother, was by the photo booth with his girlfriend, laughing at something on her phone. No one looked up. I stood there for a few seconds, expecting someone, anyone, to notice me. A smile, a wave, something. But all I got was a nod from the coat check attendant and a passing welcome from a server carrying a tray of small drinks. Trying not to feel awkward, I made my way to the gift table and placed my box carefully among the others. Most of them were large, elaborately wrapped boxes from extended family and neighbors. Mine looked small in comparison, but I'd put so much thought into it. I hoped Elena would see that. I was about to go find a seat when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Well, look who made it. Uncle Tomas. He's my dad's older brother and the self-appointed guardian of family traditions, which basically means he's good at acting superior and making everyone feel small. Hi, I said politely, offering a small smile. He looked me up and down, smirking. Didn't expect to see you tonight. Thought you were always too busy for family events. That stung more than I expected. I've attended every holiday gathering I've been invited to. I just usually leave early because of how isolating they make me feel. I wouldn't miss Elena's graduation, I replied, keeping my voice calm. He gave a chuckle and leaned in slightly. Better find a seat quick. They've got everything planned out front to back. Don't think they were expecting extra guests. Extra guests. I didn't respond. I just nodded and walked past him, scanning the room for an open chair. That's when I noticed the seating chart posted near the entrance to the main hall. There it was, 2 large rectangular tables marked family. I moved closer, scanning the rows of name cards. My parents, my siblings, even my cousins and their spouses. But no sign of my name. I checked again, slower this time. Nothing. I walked through the hall and eventually found a small round table near the far corner of the room, tucked behind a decorative partition with fake vines. It was mostly empty, just one other woman sitting there who I didn't recognize, probably a +1 from someone's work. I sat down, smoothed out my dress, and tried to smile. I told myself it was just an oversight. A mistake. Maybe I was added late, and they forgot to update the chart. That happens, right? Then I noticed the servers moving through the room with trays, salads first, then bread rolls and sparkling drinks. They moved efficiently, stopping at each table and placing dishes in front of each guest. They skipped mine. I waited a few minutes, thinking maybe they'd circle back. They didn't. I looked over toward the head table, where Elena sat beaming between my parents, holding a bouquet and posing for photos. Every plate there was full. Every glass was filled. No one turned around. No one noticed I was missing. I don't know how long I sat there before I decided to get up and ask someone. I walked up to a nearby waiter and asked quietly if there were extra plates or a buffet table. He looked confused. "I'm sorry, are you with the family group or the vendor staff?" My stomach dropped. "I'm Elena's sister." His eyes widened slightly. "Oh, I didn't know." The seating chart had specific pre-ordered meals and names listed. "Let me check with the manager." I shook my head before he could walk away. "It's fine. Don't worry about it." I went back to my seat and stayed quiet. From where I sat, I could see the stage perfectly. I watched as they gave speeches about Elena's accomplishments, toasted to her future, and laughed at old family photos projected on a screen. I wasn't in a single one of them. And then, the group photos began. By the time the photographer began calling people over for the group pictures, I had already sunk into a kind of numb stillness. Not sadness exactly, not yet. Just a quiet realization that I wasn't really part of this evening, at least not in the way everyone else was. I was background noise. The photographer's voice echoed from the front of the room. "All right, let's start with immediate family." I watched them gather. My parents, arms proudly wrapped around Elena, their faces lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. Mateo stood beside them, grinning, holding up a peace sign. Then came the aunts, uncles, and cousins, all filing in like they'd rehearsed it. I waited, thinking someone might wave me over. Even a glance in my direction would have been enough. But no one looked. I stayed seated in that little corner near the fake vines, my hands clasped in my lap, listening to the sound of laughter and camera shutters. Eventually, a waiter approached again, this time with a puzzled look on his face. "Hi," he said gently. "Your family asked that all drink and meal charges be added to their account. But since you didn't receive service, I just wanted to confirm if you'd like anything now. We can prepare a plate for you from the kitchen if you'd like." I blinked. "They asked for my tab to be added?" He nodded. "Yes, to the head table's account. It's common for family events." I smiled faintly. "It's fine. I'll cover it myself." He looked surprised, but took my card when I handed it to him. I signed the receipt without even looking at the amount. As he walked away, I stood up slowly. My knees ached from sitting in one position for so long. The music had picked up again, and people were starting to head to the dance floor. Elena had changed into a second dress, something more sparkly, more attention-grabbing. She looked beautiful, radiant even. I started walking toward the door. I didn't plan on making a scene. I wasn't going to say anything. I just wanted to leave quietly. But as I reached the entrance to the hallway, I heard a sudden bark of my name from across the room. "Liliana." I turned. My dad was striding across the floor, the expression on his face sharp and accusatory, like I'd just knocked over a vase or stormed out of a funeral. "Don't let her leave," he said to no one in particular, raising his voice. "Get her back here." Heads turned. Music kept playing, but the room had shifted. Eyes were now following me. My stomach turned, and for a split second, I debated just walking faster. Out the door. Into the night. But something in me froze. Not out of obedience, but out of disbelief. He finally reached me, stopping just short of arm's length. "What do you think you're doing?" he hissed. "I'm going home," I said, keeping my voice even. He glanced down at the receipt I was still holding. "Why did you pay?" "We had everything covered. I didn't eat. I wasn't included at a table. It didn't feel right." He scoffed. "So you're making this about you again?" I felt something twist in my chest. "No," I replied. But I wasn't really invited either. Not properly. That's when my mom walked over, her heels clicking quickly on the polished floor. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her eyes shifting between us. Dad gestured toward me. "She's leaving." In the middle of the party. Mom folded her arms. "You couldn't wait an hour?" Elena's supposed to give her speech. "She didn't even look at me when I came in," I said. "No one did." "You came late," my mom said flatly. "You didn't RSVP. We had everything carefully arranged." "I didn't RSVP because no one gave me the actual details until the day before," I said quietly. "You sent out formal invitations to everyone else. Mine came through Mateo, in a group text, after you'd already given the caterer a head count." Dad shook his head. "We're not going to do this now." Then, behind him, I saw Elena. She had joined the cluster, looking confused and vaguely annoyed. "What's going on?" she asked. "She's trying to leave," Mom said. Elena looked at me like I was the one causing the disruption. "You came, didn't you? What's the problem?" I wanted to tell her everything in that moment. The hurt, the alienation, the slow erosion of any sense of belonging in this family. I wanted to ask her if she even remembered that I was the one who helped her with her college application essays when our parents didn't have the time. If she remembered that I drove 2 hours to drop off the laptop she left at home during midterms. But I said none of that. I'm just tired, I said instead. You always do this, Elena muttered. You always find a way to make things about you. There it was again, that same line. Like I had walked in with a spotlight and turned it on myself. I felt tears prick at my eyes, not out of sadness, but from holding in too much for too long. I hope you enjoy the rest of the night, I said. I turned again, and this time no one stopped me. I reached the exit, pushed the doors open, and stepped into the quiet night air. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses faded behind me. I stood outside for a moment, staring out over the golf course. The grass glowed silver under the lights. Somewhere far off, a sprinkler clicked on. Then, just as I reached into my purse to grab my keys, I heard footsteps behind me. Liliana, came a voice I hadn't heard all evening. It was Mateo. I turned slowly. He looked awkward, hands in his pockets, eyes flicking to the pavement. I didn't realize you weren't at the table, he said. I thought you were sitting with the cousins. I raised an eyebrow. The cousins didn't invite me to sit with them. He rubbed the back of his neck. Look, I get that it fell off. But it wasn't intentional. You weren't really part of the planning group. Neither were half the neighbors, I said. But they were still offered food and a place to sit. Mateo didn't respond. I waited. He glanced up like he wanted to say something else, but whatever it was stayed buried. Then he sighed. Well, you're here now. You might as well stay for the speech. I shook my head. No, I think I've been exactly where I'm supposed to be all night. I opened my car door and got in, closing it quietly behind me. I sat there for a while after he left, engine off, just letting the silence settle. It was strange. I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel broken. I just felt done. Done pretending this was normal. Done accepting the bare minimum and calling it love. Done waiting for them to see me. I didn't sleep much that night. Even after I got home, showered, and changed into my softest pajamas, my body felt like it was still carrying the tension from that room. My phone buzzed a few times. One message from Elena that simply said, wow. Then one from my mom, short and clipped. We'll talk about this later. I didn't respond to either. I just let the messages sit there, unread. I wasn't angry in the way I thought I'd be. Not hot and explosive, not pacing the room or throwing things. I was quiet. Calm, almost. But beneath that calm was something colder. A kind of clarity I hadn't felt before. Because the truth is, this wasn't new. It wasn't the first time I'd been made to feel like an afterthought. It was just the first time they'd done it in such an organized, deliberate way. No seat, no plate, no glance in my direction. Not even a polite nod from the photographer. It wasn't oversight. It was exclusion, dressed up in streamers and catered meals. That night, I started collecting things. Not objects, memories, patterns, moments I'd brushed off at the time, but now saw differently. Like how, 2 years ago, when I got promoted at work and invited the family to dinner to celebrate, only Mateo showed up. My parents said they were too tired after the weekend. Elena said she had plans. But the next weekend, they all drove 6 hours for Elena's friend's engagement brunch. Or how, at last year's family reunion, I offered to help plan the event, suggested a location, helped coordinate RSVPs, only for them to change the venue at the last minute without telling me. When I showed up to the original location, the staff said the booking had been canceled 3 days earlier. When I finally arrived at the correct place, Elena laughed and said, "Oops, I thought I told you." That night, I made a list, not out of pettiness, but out of resolve. Because if they wanted to pretend I wasn't part of the family, I'd give them exactly what they asked for, but on my own terms. The first step wasn't about revenge. It was about distance. I stopped attending gatherings. Quietly. No long texts, no dramatic exits. When Elena's birthday came around, I sent a polite message and nothing more. When Mom texted about Thanksgiving plans, I waited 3 days before replying with a neutral, "I won't be able to make it this year. Hope it goes well." The responses were telling. At first, my absence was ignored. No one acknowledged it. Then came the guilt-flavored concern. From Mom, "Is everything okay? You've been distant." From Elena, "You mad about something? You know you didn't have to be so sensitive at the party. It wasn't personal." From Dad, silence. That was fine. Expected, even. What they didn't know was that while they were busy whispering about my new attitude, I was working on something else, something I had started quietly over the past year. See, while Elena had always been their shining hope for the future, I had been quietly building something they never really asked about. I own a small marketing firm. Nothing flashy. I started it in the spare room of my apartment, taking on freelance clients and small local businesses. I never talked about it much at family dinners because no one asked. They thought I was just in advertising and left it at that. But over the last 2 years, the business had grown significantly. What began as weekend work turned into a full operation. I now had 3 part-time employees, a steady flow of contracts, and a new office space downtown. A lot of my clients were startups run by people who had been burned by flashier firms. They appreciated that I listened. Then, about 6 months after Elena's graduation party, something happened that changed everything. I was approached by a small but promising tech company who had just received a major grant and needed full branding and outreach. The deal was big, bigger than anything I'd worked on before. I poured everything into it: strategy, design, media planning. It paid off. Their campaign blew up, and they told their partners, and their partners told their partners. One of those partners? A mid-sized distribution firm, family-owned, known for their tight circles and tendency to only work with trusted names. That firm was owned by a man named Gregor Emil. Gregor happened to be the major financial backer of my dad's latest business expansion project. Small world, right? I didn't go into the meeting with any intention beyond doing my job. But when Gregor mentioned working with this older guy who's building a shipping extension in the region, I knew exactly who he was talking about. And I smiled, because for the first time, I saw the path forming right in front of me. My dad's company had always been his pride. He ran a fleet of transport vehicles and had been trying to expand into eco-friendly logistics. It was smart, actually, lots of demand for it. But he was in over his head. He didn't understand digital media or the changing landscape, and he relied on people like Uncle Tomas to give him bad advice wrapped in confidence. I knew, from a few quiet conversations with Matteo in the past, that Dad had taken on more debt than he let on, that the expansion was risky, that he was hoping to land a few final contracts to stay afloat. So when Gregor asked if I'd be open to helping him audit and rebrand all his partners for better alignment, I nodded slowly and said I'd be happy to. Over the next 2 months, I worked closely with Gregor's firm. I was methodical, quiet, professional. I never brought up my family connection. I didn't need to. I simply let the numbers and reports speak for themselves. And the numbers told a very clear story. Outdated practices, overpromised timelines, weak customer retention strategies. Gregor was hesitant to pull support entirely. My dad had been a partner for years. But with the new eco expansion, he wanted precision, efficiency, clarity. I provided him with a full breakdown and then sat back to watch what would happen. It took 3 weeks. One Tuesday afternoon, my dad's office received a formal notice. The investment backing was being restructured. Future contracts would be reviewed and subject to third-party compliance standards. His project was no longer guaranteed funding. He didn't know I had written those standards. He didn't know I had become the gatekeeper. But the best part? He called me that night. I didn't answer. Instead, I listened to his voicemail. He sounded tired, irritated, confused. Liliana, I need to talk to you. Something weird's going on with Gregor's firm. You ever heard of a company called LS Brand Strategies? They're involved now. Might be good for you to take a look. Call me. LS. Liliana Silva. My name right there. On the header of every page he hadn't bothered to read closely. After listening to my dad's voicemail, I sat in silence for a long time. Not because I was conflicted, not because I was unsure of what I'd done, but because for the first time in my life, the balance had shifted. And they didn't even realize I was the one holding the other end of the rope now. I didn't call him back. Instead, I forwarded the voicemail to my business lawyer just to document the contact. Then I did what I always do when something big happens. I went back to work. Quietly, carefully, intentionally. Over the following weeks, my name began surfacing in meetings my family had no access to. I wasn't flaunting it. I wasn't posting about it or name-dropping or chasing headlines. That wasn't my style. But word spread. In our industry, results matter, and mine were becoming hard to ignore. Gregor's firm pulled all funding from my dad's expansion plan by the end of that fiscal quarter. Officially, the report cited strategic misalignment with future goals and unresolved efficiency concerns. But my dad knew. He must have known, because 3 days later, I received a long message from Elena. It started fake cheerful. Hey sis, hope you're doing well. So Dad's been having a really weird time with his company. Something about a rebranding firm making recommendations to his investors? You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? LOL. Anyway, we should catch up soon. I feel like we haven't talked in forever. I read it once, then again, and then I deleted it. The next message came from my mom. More direct. No fake smile. Your father is dealing with serious professional difficulties right now. If you've had anything to do with that, I hope you understand how much damage you've caused to this family. I didn't respond. Because here's what she didn't understand. I hadn't caused the damage. I had just stopped shielding them from the consequences of their own behavior. I'd stopped twisting myself into silence just to keep the peace at tables I was never really welcome at. 6 months later, my dad's company quietly shut down its expansion division. He sold off one of his trucks and laid off 5 employees. The website was taken down. Their social media went dark. I heard all of this from Mateo, who, oddly enough, was the only one who seemed to suspect the truth. We met for coffee one afternoon. It was casual. No big confrontation. He just stared at me for a while over his drink, then said, "You're not the same as you used to be." I didn't deny it. He leaned back in his chair. "Was it you? The branding audits?" I met his eyes. "Does it matter?" He shrugged. "Not really. They always thought they could treat you however they wanted, and you'd still show up smiling." I didn't say anything. He nodded slowly. "Well, they know now." That was the last time we spoke in person. A year passed. Elena got a new job in marketing, ironically, at a company that had previously interviewed with mine but chose not to hire my firm. She was doing okay, from what I could tell, but she'd faded from my life almost entirely. The occasional birthday text. A tagged photo on a cousin's social media. My parents tried once more, near the holidays. They invited me to a small family gathering. Said they wanted to start fresh. I didn't go, not out of spite, but because I didn't trust their idea of a fresh start. I knew exactly what it would look like. Smiles stretched too wide. Carefully worded apologies that placed the blame everywhere and nowhere. A request to just move on. No, I'd moved on already, but not quietly, because in the meantime, I'd been growing. My firm had doubled in size. I opened a second office. I was invited to speak at a small business summit. I partnered with 2 major nonprofit campaigns, projects that actually aligned with my values. I built the kind of career I had never been given credit for, and I did it without a seat at their table. Eventually, they stopped reaching out altogether. Maybe it was pride. Maybe they convinced themselves I had changed too much. Maybe they still believed I was the one who walked away. But they never asked why I left the party that night. Not really. They never asked what it felt like to stand in a room full of your own family and feel invisible. What it meant to be forgotten, then blamed for noticing. They just told themselves a version of the story that made them feel better. That I was dramatic. That I had a chip on my shoulder. That I needed to heal. But I didn't need healing. I needed distance. I needed boundaries. I needed to stop watering a garden that had never grown anything but silence. So here's where things stand now. I no longer speak to my parents. I haven't heard from Elena in nearly a year. Mateo and I text sometimes, casual updates, no depth. I spend holidays with friends who feel more like family than blood ever did. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm missing anything. They took me for granted until I quietly, fully, completely walked away. And when they finally noticed, I was already gone. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you like this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.